So this is a very short video which goes through the work that we did in the lesson before we answered this question in class. So this is just for you to revise from if you want to. Just remember though that we're only doing this type of question because we haven't done very much of the novel. So the question generally in the exam will be something along the lines of how does Dickens present Scrooge in this extract and in the rest of the novel. So you're always expected to extrapolate out from an extract to the whole novel. But we can't do that at the moment because we haven't read enough of it. So we're going to start with just looking at the use of repetition in this first sentence. So the repetition of the word soul. So soul, which means only. So soul, 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 soul. Now, obviously that's emphasising Scrooge's loneliness and Marley's loneliness as well, but it's meant to make you think of the word soul, S-O-U-L, and that's a homophone. So a homophone is spelt like that, and a homophone is when a word sounds like something but is spelt, it sounds the same as something but it's spelt differently, and in this case it's S-O-U-L. It's a homophone for S-O-U-L, so someone's soul. And potentially that's because the author wants us to think already about the state of Scrooge's soul, what's going to happen to him if he doesn't mend his ways, that maybe he's going to go to hell, or possibly it's a foreshadowing of the ghost that we're going to see very shortly. So someone's soul is loose. So it can work in all of those ways. It's a very clever technique. So we're just going to go forward to the section that we were really focusing on, which was really mainly this one. But just to notice that we're also told that Scrooge never painted out Marley's name. Now you could put that down to two things. You could put, or one of two things. You could say that he didn't paint out Marley's name because Marley had been his only friend, and therefore he didn't want to forget that Marley had existed. But because Scrooge is characterised as someone who's mean and misanthropic, he doesn't like other human beings, really would probably put it down to laziness, and that's really confirmed here. It says, sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge Scrooge, and sometimes Marley, but he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. He doesn't really care whether somebody knows him for himself or somebody just makes a mistake and thinks he's Marley. So perhaps he's just lazy or just totally uncommunicative and shut off from the rest of society. So we did talk about that in the lesson, but really we're going to focus on this section here for the piece of writing. So I suggest you watch this video first and then have a look at the answers that I wrote. So the first thing we notice is that the extract starts with the exclamation O, and it has an exclamation mark after it, and it might be, one could argue, that the narrator is so horrified by Scrooge's behaviour that he is forced to sort of exclaim before he tells us exactly what Scrooge was like, because it's just so horrific. And it's important to notice that there's an exclamation mark here, and there's an exclamation mark here after the word Scrooge, just to show how exasperated the narrator might be with Scrooge. Now in the second sentence of this extract, just notice how many plosives there are. There's a bilabial plosive with the first b, but, and then the dental plosives come thick and fast. There's a T there, T there, T there, T in the middle of there, the D there, the D there. So, and another T there. So that there's so many dental plosives, it creates quite a harsh, explosive sound. Again, possibly suggesting the narrator's horror at how Scrooge is behaving, but also reminding us of how hard and sharp Scrooge is, as well as being mean, tight-fisted, and a hand at the grindstone just means that he made the people that work for him work really hard. Then notice the verbs that are used to describe Scrooge now, that they're all written in the present continuous. So squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, all in the present continuous, perhaps suggesting that this is what Scrooge has been like for a long time, that he's like that now. It's continuing. He's likely to be like that in the future unless something significant changes. But look at the actual words, what they're suggesting: squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching. They all, if you did that to someone, it would hurt. They're all things that would hurt someone. So it suggests that Scrooge is someone that causes pain to other people, whether it's financial pain or physical pain or just pain through sort of neglectful behaviour. That's what he's doing to others through the way that he behaves. The final word in the list, covetous. Covetousness is one of the 7 deadly sins. It means greed, sort of grasping desire to have things, money or goods. And because it's one of the 7 deadly sins, it perhaps suggests that the narrator is thinking that this person, Scrooge, if he doesn't change how he is, might well end up in hell. And that's just underlined through describing him as an old sinner. Someone who sins is someone who's likely to end up in hell. Then we have a couple of really interesting similes used to describe Scrooge. So hard and sharp as flint. Now, flint, obviously, it's stone. It's making us, again, telling us that he's hard, he's unmalleable, you can't mould him into something else, you can't change him. But also, he's a flint from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire. So you could use a flint to create a spark to make a fire from. But in this case, the flint that is Scrooge has never been used to struck out generous fire. So he's not good for anything warm or giving or useful, really. Following from that, he's described as secret and self-contained and as solitary as an oyster. You notice here the prevalence of sibilants: secret, self, solitary, oyster, and as. So lots of sibilants suggesting perhaps a slyness, a containedness, a shut-offness about Scrooge. And this simile here, solitary as an oyster, is a really useful one because if you think about what an oyster's like with that hard shell, which is really difficult to prise open, it's showing you how Scrooge is the soft bit inside, but he's sheltered himself with a hard outer layer that's very difficult to get through, as difficult as an oyster is to open. But it also makes us wonder, why has he done that? Why has he created this protective layer? What's he trying to protect himself from, and what's happened to him in the past? So whilst we might be being really unforgiving about him at first, I think the narrator is trying to make us ask ourselves the question, well, why has this man become like this? That would be a more Christian response to someone, to wonder what it is that has made them that way, rather than just dismiss them and condemn them to hell. And also, when you think about an oyster, if you do manage to open an oyster, it's hard work to get in there, but if you do manage to open an oyster, sometimes there's a pearl, and possibly there's an implication here that there's something special within Scrooge that's just waiting for an opportunity to be prized out. However, the last bit of the extract is full of the lexis of cold. So words like cold itself, froze, shriveled, his thin blue lips, a frosty rime, a chill. So lots of words to do with cold, and it's really saying that Scrooge is cold inside and out. And it's even saying, really, when it says that his thin lips are blue, it's saying that the coldness inside is making him unattractive, with his pointed sharp nose and his shriveled cheek, as if he's shriveling away and dying because of the way that he lives. But the thin blue lips, actually seems as if he's more dead body than alive body. So his behaviour is actually as if he's dead already. It's hardly worth being alive. And then finally, this description here, he iced his office in the dog days. Dog days are the hottest days of summer, and he manages to create a coldness in those very hot days, and doesn't even bother to make something warm or pleasant at Christmas, when a Christian man should be thinking about the people that he works with and looking after his family. And the Scrooge doesn't even bother to do that then.